All right, Ravi Belani is here. He was an associate at DFJ. He did the Justin TV, which became Twitch Investment. But as you've said, you weren't on the partner track. You weren't able, and you didn't see a path to become a partner at DFJ. And so you wound up starting your own accelerator, which has become successful. And so this leads me to wonder, why didn't they want you to be a partner there? Were there just too many partners, or they didn't like you, or you were you don't work well with other people? You seem like such a nice person. Why didn't they make you a partner after hitting a unicorn investment?
Thank you for the question, Jason. That's very flattering of you to ask. I should say, first of all, DFJ was the original anchor LP in Alchemist. So they wrote the first check, and that vote of confidence was huge. And I don't even know if Alchemist would have existed if DFJ didn't become the anchor LP. But let me answer your question. So the reality was that Justin TV, which became Twitch, did not succeed. Nobody knew that it was going to be big until after I left DFJ. And so, again, I think this is the phenomenal thing about being in ventures, that you don't really know if you're good or not for 7 to 10 years.
Right.
And so at the time, I was 4 years into my associate position, and it wasn't clear what was going to happen with Justin TV and with Twitch. And I should say, Draper Associates funded Justin TV, which was actually a fund that Tim Draper, who's part of the DFJ partnership, has as a special vehicle. So it was a little bit different also on that regard. So that's the first thing, is that Twitch was not a unicorn at the time that they had to make a decision about my status. And the second thing is, I don't know if I would have, I think, as you know, Jason, is the thing about venture capital firms is that it's not really like an industry. Like, that's sort of a false analogy to think that I think VC is like any other industry, like consulting or banking, and you're being promoted to partner. It's much more like little mafiosas. Like each fund is its own family, and they have their own culture, and they have their own ways of making decisions. And really, when you think about these big names like DFJ or Mayfield or USVP, it's really like 5 people. Like, at the end of the day, it comes to like a small set of people that are making some core decisions. And I think from their judgment, they didn't. I mean, I think there was a feeling that Ravi was a nice guy, that I'm a nice guy, but I don't have sort of the sharp elbows to become a venture capitalist.
Wow, that's interesting.
I'm not saying that they actually said that explicitly, but I think if I was trying to be honest on making that assessment, I think there was an assessment that I was not. I was a good team member, but I wasn't meant to become
not cutthroat enough to be a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley.
And they never said that. I just think that there's an assessment
interpretation.
But I think there's an assessment, and I don't even know if they would. And that's probably overly specific and not necessarily something they would say. But I think there was an assessment that I wasn't the right fit for the partner path.
Got it.
And I would say, though, that in general, the biggest blessing for me was actually not getting promoted to partner at DFJ, and was having them fund Alchemist, because that was my alchemy. That was my path of actually. The beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is that I think with Alchemist we talk about how, like, you would think about it as the entrepreneur is the alchemist. He or she is creating all of this change by transforming industries. But the reality is that the path of entrepreneurship actually can alchemize or can change the entrepreneur. The very practice of going through, and I do think that that's what happened to me, was that I actually have developed a lot from going down this alchemist path where I wouldn't have if I stayed in venture capital.
So you start this alchemy and you say, I'm going to do B2B. I'm assuming this was because Y Combinator was, let's face it, pretty much a B2C approach, primarily at the time, a decade ago or 7 years ago. I'm not sure exactly. When did you start Alchemist?
We started in 2012.
2012, yeah. So back at that time, Y Combinator was, probably considered mostly B2C, yeah? So that's why you went B2B, or was there something about B2B that you just preferred?
Again, this was something that we co-created. So everything that we've done that's been beautiful has been co-created. It's been in real time and agilely developed. So what happened was we started, and what you're saying is essentially true, but we started at the Harvard Club of San Francisco, and this was when I was at DFJ. I was doing these speaker series events. So I always loved teaching entrepreneurs. And in fact, right now I also teach at Stanford, and so I'm a lecturer in the MS&E department. We put up all of our lectures at ecorner.stanford.edu. But I also, when I was at DFJ, I was running these speaker series at the Harvard Club. And we did this 6-week program where we just structured a bunch of the key lessons into a 6-week program. We didn't think about it as an accelerator, but we had all these amazing VPs from Salesforce and Oracle and all these big enterprise companies coming, and we were like, why are you coming to this Harvard Club speaker series? And they said, because we don't need to raise $5 million. Everything that was happening in the consumer side was happening in the enterprise side. You could do 500K, could do what 5 million did 10 years prior. But we want all the education and guidance that we would have gotten from a VC fund, and Y Combinator and 500 startups are all much more geared towards really, building consumer companies. They were designed around coming up with a chart that went up and to the right and then injecting FOMO and having everybody read into the tea leaves and then write a check. That's an oversimplification, but there's a
That's kind of sounds like a bit of the playbook. I mean, the cynical view of accelerators during that time was they were taking the 100K and spending it over 12 weeks, a little bit at a time, and increasing over each of the 12 weeks to build a chart. And then if you were a savvy investor, I would say, oh, this is great. Look at that chart. Okay, yeah, can you give me the source of each of these customers? Show me where they came from. And they're like, yeah, these came from Facebook. I'm like, oh, that's great. Can you break it down on a percentage basis for what's paid and what's not? And you'd be like, oh, 90% of this is just you paying to get people to come to the website. I get it. Now, not that paid is not real, but you probably would want to wait 6 months to see if that cohort data, if they actually stuck around and it wasn't just gasoline on a log being charred, but not an actual real fire of consumer passion.